In this video, I'll show you how to add overflow protection to the PEZ dispenser we built in part 2 of my station tutorial. First, a short demonstration. As a cart leaves the arrival zone of the station, it passes over a detector rail that's hooked into a piston at the top of the PEZ dispenser. When the piston extends, if the PEZ dispenser is already full, the top cart is pushed off the stack of carts. The extra cart will fall to a short section of powered tracks, where it is sent to an overflow cart holding area. There are three main components to the overflow protection system. First, the tracks that carry the extra cart to the holding area. Next, the piston and the redstone torch chain that powers it. And finally, a pulse generator that causes the piston to quickly extend and retract so the incoming cart does not hit the piston. To build the tracks for the holding area, we first dig a 2-block trench at the base of the PEZ dispenser, immediately adjacent to the block on which the carts are resting. We then lay power tracks to carry the extra cart out of the trench. In order to provide power to these tracks without interfering with the existing redstone that connects to the piston at the base of the PEZ dispenser, we can temporarily remove the block on which the stacked carts sit, as well as the block underneath it. We place a torch, then replace the original block. The torch will power the block itself, which in turn powers our powered rails. Next, we dig a 2-block deep pit at a convenient location and then run normal rails to the pit. We place a track piece on the block at the bottom of the pit. This track piece will force the carts to merge rather than stacking, so that our pit can hold any number of carts. Finally, we place a block on the opposite side of the pit from our incoming track. The extra carts will hit the block and fall down into the pit. To place our piston, we first climb to the top of the ramp of our PEZ dispenser. We can then place a temporary block next to the existing floating block. This will help us to place the piston correctly. We then place a piston next to the temporary block. The piston should be oriented so that when it extends, it will push the extra cart toward the tracks of our holding area. Once the piston is placed, we can remove the temporary block. Now that we have our piston placed, we need to supply it with power. Unfortunately, since the piston is floating above ground, there's no good way to completely hide the redstone wiring. However, we can minimize the amount of redstone showing by using a series of torches to send redstone power directly vertically. The easiest way to do this is to make a column of blocks from the bottom of the piston to ground level. We can then remove every other block, starting with the block directly under the piston. After we've removed the blocks, we can place a torch on top of each block. We will continue this chain of torches in the next step, but for now the basic idea is that we want to end up with an even number of torches, so that the final result is an inactive torch directly under the piston. To prepare for this section, I have extended the pit containing the redstone wiring of our arrival zone so that it now wraps around the side of the PEZ dispenser. We will be attaching the pulse generator to the existing wiring of the arrival zone, so we'll need access to the current circuitry as well as the torch chain that powers the piston. Since we already have a detector rail in place from the passenger detection RS NOR latch we built for the arrival system, we can branch directly off of this same input. However, we want to isolate the wiring for our pulse generator so that it is unaffected by the state of the RS NOR latch. We can do this by placing a redstone repeater in the existing line of redstone that runs between the detector rail and the input of the RS NOR latch. Since repeaters only transfer power in one direction, the power flowing from the RS NOR latch will not pass the repeater and so will not accidentally trigger the pulse generator. After we place the repeater, we can begin to build our pulse generator. A standard pulse generator will activate when the input turns off, but this will likely be too slow for our needs. To fix this, we invert the current coming from the detector rail so that the input to our pulse generator is turned off when the detector rail is first pressed, rather than when it is released. To do this, we place an inverter next to the isolated portion of redstone. Since there isn't a straight piece of redstone connecting the inverter to the existing wiring, we can place a piece of redstone dust on top of the block of the inverter to complete the connection. Next, we place a repeater directly in front of the torch of the inverter. We will later use this repeater to control the length of the pulse. We can then place two blocks, the first one directly in front of the repeater, and the second one space in front and two spaces to the side. Place torches on the front of both blocks. To finish the pulse generator, we need to complete the redstone connections. We first place a single piece of redstone that will connect the torch of the first block to the second block. We then run a line of redstone from the inverter to the back of the second block. Now we need to extend the redstone torch chain we made in the previous step. Follow the same pattern as before with a torch between each block. Make sure there are an even number of torches once you are done. In my case, the final torch is actually on the floor of the pit, so I'll need to dig out the block in front of the bottom torch in order to plug in my redstone. Once the torch chain is complete, you merely need to run a line of redstone from the output of the pulse generator to the base of the block under the final torch. To finish up, we need to set the length of the pulse so that it's slow enough to change the state of the torches, but fast enough that the piston fully retracts before the minecart reaches the top of the PEZ dispenser. I found that the repeater set to its next to highest setting works well. If your minecart is reaching the top of the ramp before the piston fully retracts, even when the repeater is set to the lowest setting, that will still change the state of your torches. Try replacing some of the power tracks leading out of your arrival zone. This will cause the cart to travel to the PEZ dispenser at less than top speed, giving your piston more time to retract. We can then test the system by placing minecarts on the outgoing track of our arrival zone. Once the PEZ dispenser is full, the piston should begin pushing the top cart off the stack and onto the track leading to the holding area.